two Marines stacking a doorway. The fighter on the other side of that wall has been waiting for exactly this moment, and he makes one catastrophic decision. He peeks the corner. What happens in the next half second gets recorded, replayed in every urban warfare training room from Quantico to Stuttgart, and studied as the definitive proof that curiosity in a kill zone is fatal. This is the top 5 most decisive corner peek eliminations ever captured on combat camera. 5 moments when the wrong man looked first, and combat camera caught every frame of what came next. November 2004, Fallujah's Jolan district. Marine units from 1st Battalion, 8th Marines pushed block by block through corridors barely wide enough for 2 men. Mud brick walls packed tight on both sides. Every doorway a black rectangle. Every black rectangle a possible rifle barrel at chest height. The geometry of the Jolan district gave neither side safety. A fighter stepping through a threshold was exposed. A Marine stacking outside one was equally if someone waited on the other side. That symmetry made this block a kill ground for both. But combat camera was rolling, and what it captured in the next few seconds would end that symmetry permanently, because one fighter was about to make the one decision you cannot undo. The barrel appeared first. The barrel appeared first. A few inches of steel edging past the door frame. Then the muzzle. Then the hand gripping it. The combat camera, already rolling, caught every frame. The insurgent moved slow, deliberate, scanning the corridor before committing his body. The rifle swept left, then right. Then his head broke the plane of the door frame, partial exposure, maybe 6 inches of skull visible above the weapon. He was reading the street, calculating. What he could not calculate was the Marine position already locked on that threshold. The sniper had been watching that doorway for 43 seconds before the barrel appeared. The geometry the insurgent trusted for cover had already been mapped, dialed, and solved. That partial head, that 6-inch window, that is the peak that ends everything. What happens in the next half second is permanent, and the camera doesn't look away. The half second already happened. The Marine sniper positioned inside a second-floor window 41 meters across that corridor broke the trigger on a single 7.62 round. The insurgent's head dropped behind the doorframe and did not come back up. The Marine Corps AAR from Operation Phantom Fury documents it exactly that way, single round expended. Target neutralized, position cleared without further resistance. Time from first exposure to confirmed incapacitation, under half a second. Distance, 41 meters. Round count, 1. That is the hard metric the camera cannot lie about. What the footage shows is not a firefight. It is the complete, immediate, irreversible end of one. The doorway that had pinned the squad for 11 minutes went silent in less time than it takes to blink. What Marines did with that footage afterward is what made this moment matter beyond Fallujah. That single round traveled 41 meters and ended a firefight. It also traveled straight into every Marine Corps pre-deployment brief that followed. Footage from the Jolan district clearance was reviewed at the infantry officer course at Quantico. That is the institutional weight of 1 documented second. But Fallujah's doorways were a controlled problem. The Korengal Valley handed that lesson back on vertical terrain that made every previous calculation worthless. The Korengal Valley, eastern Afghanistan, 2007, engagement distances compressed to 500 meters or less. Terrain funneled everything patrol routes, fields of fire, escape lines into predictable channels both sides memorized inside a week. Afghan fighters understood this ground intimately. Rooftop parapets on the valley's stone compounds looked like perfect cover hard angles that seemed to swallow a man's silhouette from below. Seemed to. What those fighters didn't account for was a U.S. designated marksman on the opposite ridgeline with a clear sight line, a scope already dialed, and a camera rolling on the position. What happens next takes under 2 seconds. The fighter rises from behind the parapet maybe 8 inches of head and shoulder, clearing the roofline. He's scanning toward the patrol route, weapon coming up, acquiring. What he doesn't know, the designated marksman has had that exact position glassed for minutes. The scope is already settled, the firing solution already made. The camera captures the partial exposure and chilling clarity the precise moment he commits to the peak. He believes the stone lip below his chin makes him invisible from below. It doesn't account for elevation. That is the fatal miscalculation of every man who trusted a parapet in the Korengal. The exposure lasts under 2 seconds. What the marksman does inside that window is where this gets precise. He fires once. The engagement log confirms it, approximately 340 meters, single round, M14 EBR. The shot lands inside the window of exposure before the fighter completes his acquisition. 1 round. The position goes silent, no secondary movement above that parapet for the remainder of the engagement. That is the designated marksman's answer to a 2-second gamble. From the helmet cam angle below, you see nothing dramatic. The ridgeline simply stops producing fire. The patrol keeps moving. The SDM radios the position neutralized and returns to scanning. That silence is the metric. 1 peak, 1 round, 1 less firing position in the Korengal's deadly geometry. What separates this footage from hundreds of unverified combat clips circulating online is something that happened after the trigger was pulled, and that authentication trail is what the next beat reveals. The clip you just watched didn't come from Funker 530. This footage carries a DoD visual information stamp chain of custody runs from the combat camera team embedded with 2nd Battalion, 503rd Infantry, 173rd Airborne Brigade operating in the Korengal sector during the 2007-2008 rotation. The engagement date aligns with documented firefight logs from that window. Unit designation, grid, weapon system all cross-referenced against official reporting. That authentication is the difference between a clip and a record. When military instructors pull footage for training packages, this is the standard they require. Verified provenance, confirmed metrics, a clean chain from trigger pull to institutional archive. That is what makes the Korengal footage stand as evidence, not spectacle. But if you think a rooftop parapet offered a dangerous false sense of cover, wait until you see what Kunar province compound walls gave Taliban fighters. Kunar province, 2011. The compound walls here ran thick, mud brick, 2 feet deep in places, stacked generations before any American boot touched Afghan soil. For Taliban fighters operating in Kunar's tight valley corridors, those walls weren't just cover, they were confidence. Step behind one, edge to the corner, take your shot, pull back. Coalition patrols moving through these compounds had taken fire from corner positions dozens of times, the shooter already gone before a response round left the barrel. That pattern bred certainty. Fighters here had learned that a quick peek was survivable. The geometry seemed to guarantee it tight angles, broken sight lines, friendly terrain. What they hadn't accounted for was the element already in position above them. Camera running, completely still, waiting. The overwatch position had been set before first light. Camera already rolling. Just a fixed frame locked onto a compound corner 40 meters below the same corner the element had flagged as a likely fire position before the patrol ever stepped off. For minutes, the feed shows nothing. The patience in that footage is almost uncomfortable to watch because you know something is coming and the camera doesn't blink. Captain David Eastburn's element had read the terrain correctly. They'd identified the angle, climbed into position, and held. Every second of stillness was deliberate. Overwatch isn't passive, it's a trap set with discipline instead of wire. The camera keeps running. The corner stays empty. Then, something shifts at the base of that wall. Then, the corner stops being a corner. He comes around it fully, not a blade slice of exposure, a full silhouette. Both shoulders visible. The weapon is up, muzzle angled toward the patrol route below. He is committed. He has picked his target and he is firing. That is the mistake the camera captures in real time. The compound wall that gave him confidence through 10 seconds of approach has placed him in the exact geometry the Overwatch position was built to exploit. He has no idea the camera has been tracking that corner since before sunrise. His silhouette fills the frame. The weapon is raised. 40 meters below, the trap has already closed. He just doesn't know it yet. What happens next is on camera. Every frame of it. The round breaks the stillness before you even process the trigger. One frame, his silhouette fills the corner, weapon up, committed. The next, he is no longer standing. The camera captures the collapse in full resolution forward, immediate, final. The shot came from an overwatch position, holding that corner in its crosshairs before he ever approached the wall. Distance confirmed in the engagement log. Single round. Time between full exposure and impact under 1 second. That is the Kunar footage. It is why this clip circulates differently than every other piece of combat camera footage in the genre. But what happened next to that footage is the part that changed a generation of infantry training. That footage didn't stay in an evidence folder. U.S. Army instructors pulled it into urban warfare training packages not as a trophy, but as a proof of principle. The Kunar clip became a fixed frame and exposure discipline curriculum. One fighter stepped into a corner he thought was safe. The round was already coming. Every infantryman who watched that footage learned the same lesson without paying the same price. That was one fighter misreading a wall. In Mosul, an entire army had turned the walls themselves into a weapon and still got read the same way. Mosul, 2016, East Bank. ISIS didn't just defend Mosul's alley network, they engineered it. Walls breached between buildings created internal corridors invisible from the street. Debris funneled Iraqi counter-terrorism service elements into pre-sighted kill zones. Every corner became a firing position. Every intersection a potential ambush node. The tactic was corner to corner bounding. One fighter peeks, fires, pulls back while a second repositions through the breached wall system behind him. Coalition forces couldn't fix a target that evaporated through rubble before the round left the barrel. For weeks it had been working. CTS columns slowed, taking casualties against an enemy they could hear but couldn't hold in their sights long enough to engage decisively. That changes the moment one fighter decides a particular corner offers enough cover to acquire a target and a combat camera is already watching. A deliberate commitment, the fighter eases his barrel around the corner first. Then his helmet edge follows, tilting forward, acquiring. The posture says everything. He believes this corner is his. The combat camera catches it all. The slight forward lean of a man lining up a shot on the CTS element exposed in the intersection below. He holds the peak longer than he should. That is the mistake. In urban combat, every extra second of exposure is a second the other side is using. He is committed weight forward, eye behind the sight, fully readable to anyone watching that sight line. Someone is watching that sight line. What follows is measured in fractions of a second. The camera does not look away. The fighter's barrel is still around that corner when the Iraqi CTS marksman fires. Single round. Confirmed distance, approximately 40 meters. The weapon, an HK-416 standard CTS issue during the Mosul clearance, does not need a second trigger pull. The combat camera captures it in the same frame. Barrel visible, helmet edge present. Then neither. Coalition-embedded observers logged the time between full exposure and round impact at under 1 second. The fighter committed to the peak at 0.0. The round lands before he can process that his position has been read. The alley goes silent in the way alleys only go silent when the threat at the end of them is no longer a threat. That is the instant reversal. But this elimination does not stay inside that alley. What the Iraqi counter-terrorism service does with the footage next is what makes it significant beyond the moment. The Iraqi counter-terrorism service does not let decisive engagements disappear into the rubble. CTS commanders formally documented this elimination in their after-action reporting for the Mosul clearance operation. The footage and the paperwork together created an institutional record, not just a clip proof that the tactic worked, that Iraqi forces executed it, and that Mosul's alley-by-alley methodology was producing measurable results. That is the CTS confirmation. But Mosul's alleys, brutal as they were, still gave fighters room to maneuver. Sangin gave fighters something far more dangerous: confidence. And confidence in Sangin had a body count that staggers the mind. Sangin, Helmand Province. By 2010, this single district had swallowed more coalition blood than almost anywhere else in Afghanistan. British forces had taken catastrophic casualties holding it for years before U.S. Marines inherited the ground. Taliban fighters knew every compound wall, alley choke point, and every doorway that funneled a patrol into a kill zone. They had used those doorways dozens of times. Step out, fire, step back. The tactic had worked often enough that it became muscle memory, confidence built on a body count. But confidence in Sangin was a trap of its own making, because the Marines who replaced the British brought Overwatch cameras, designated marksmen, and patience. The Taliban fighter leaning out of a doorway to locate a patrol was no longer a tactic. It was a decision with a timer attached, and that timer was already running. The timer the previous beat described it's already running now. Sangin, Helmand Province, 2010, a Marine element pushes through a compound alley, walls close enough to touch on both sides, dust, heat, boots on packed earth. Then the crack snap of incoming rounds. Contact, the patrol collapses into cover, Marines pressing flat against compound walls, calling sectors. Somewhere down that alley, a Taliban fighter can hear movement but cannot see it. He needs a visual. He needs to know where they are. So he does what fighters in Sangin had done dozens of times before. He shifts toward the doorway. He starts to lean just enough to get eyes on the patrol. The decision feels like tactics. In Sangin, 2010, it is something else entirely. The marksman already has the doorway. The doorway is a black rectangle. The marksman's reticle never leaves it. The Taliban fighter leans. Just his head, just his weapon hand, the classic Sangin peek, the one that had worked before. The combat camera captures the exact frame, his face in the opening, weapon rising, eyes still adjusting to the light. He doesn't finish the adjustment. The sharpshooter fires once. Quarter second from full exposure to impact. The camera records both events in the same frame, fighter present, then fighter gone. The doorway goes back to being a black rectangle. That is the quarter second window. Dust hangs in the alley. Patrol sectors haven't changed, but incoming fire from that position has stopped completely, permanently with a single trigger pull. What the Marine Corps wrote about this moment in their after-action report is precise, clinical, and worth hearing in full. The Marine after-action report for this engagement doesn't read like a story. It reads like a ledger. One enemy combatant neutralized. Engagement duration, under 1 second. Position, compromised doorway aperture. Compound alley, Sangin District, Helmand Province. One trigger pull closed the engagement completely. That is what the AAR said. But what happened to this footage after the report was filed, how it survived, where it lives now, that's the part the Pentagon didn't plan for. That AAR was filed. Then, in 2021, the Pentagon began quietly pulling the archive 120,000 images, 17,000 videos gone from DVID servers. This clip survived because it had already been processed through multiple institutional channels before the purge. What remains accessible sits inside verified military visual information records. That is the institutional record. If what you just watched didn't give you goosebumps, watch it again. Now the question that matters, when that fighter stepped around the corner, was that a failure of training or a failure of command? Drop your answer below. Subscribe if you believe the answer is both.